What's going on, everyone? I want to talk about some nav decay issues that I have seen in the Yieldmax fund. I'm sure there's a lot more. I want to talk about one specifically that I've noticed that I just got out of. And is your retirement account, on a long ship of nav decay headed out to nowhere? Let's get into it. You know, I want to talk about the real problem with nav erosion. But first, I was wrong about the long-term effects of nav erosion. I made a video, last year sometime about how nav erosion wasn't affecting me. And it really wasn't because we were in a bull run. So everything was going up. And even if they were capped, meaning the shares of, like, I don't know, AMZ, Nvidia, YMAG, whatever, they'd be capped. They would come down a little bit, and then they would reset their options or whatever, and the fund would just continue to rise, albeit slowly, and not to the level of the underlying. It would rise up. And the dividends continued to actually increase over time during the bull run. So I wasn't seeing the effects of nav erosion because it just wasn't real world to me. However, after some time, I noticed that there were some serious issues. I want to show a current situation of some massive nav decay in a fund, and this will undoubtedly affect retirement accounts. I'm talking longer term here, not like this in the next 6 months or a year from now. I'm talking longer term, and this is why I started getting out of the majority of Yieldmax funds last summer and into the fall and winter. So let's get into the what I've noticed here recently. Okay. We're going to look at a chart of Netflix, and we're going to talk about Netflix and Netflix. I went into Netflix. I made a video about it a few days ago about how I was only going to get into Netflix for return on investment. I wasn't worried about it for a long-term retirement. It was just basically a long swing trade, okay? And what happened was I went in prior to earnings, and I figured if earnings fell, I would just average into the position, lump sum, and just let it go. So I put 50% of what I wanted in a Netflix prior to earnings. Well, earnings ripped up, and then the share price appreciated on Netflix. Okay, and we came up to this double top on Netflix, and I was up about 2 months worth of distributions on share price appreciation. So I just sold the Netflix position, took the profits, and moving on with my life. And another reason I sold is because we're up here at this double top on Netflix. But that's not the point of this video. What I want to show you here is you see the high that we formed. Let's zoom in here a little bit, okay? Was 1064 yesterday. Okay, that was the high of Netflix. Okay, now let's go look where Netflix is and why this is important. Here we are on Netflix, right? The former high, as you can see way back there, was actually in December. We're going to talk more about that in a minute and why this is problematic for long-term holders for like retirement situation. So you can see here, we're not even close. Like, here's the all-time high, right? And here we are on Netflix. Now, why is this a problem long-term? Well, that means that the share price will decline over time, as we can see clearly, and that the distributions over time will also decline. And that's problematic if you're trying to level off that. But let's get into this and get into the root of the issue here. Okay, so we see this high at 1985 in Netflix. We can look right here. This was December 11th. If you can look down there, there's 1210. And then the next day was 1211. Okay, that was the high for Netflix. Let's go back here and look at that. You see that? Now, where is Netflix as far as this goes? Here's Netflix on December 11th. We see that right there? We're matching those up. Netflix at 1211. Netflix at 1211. Okay. Now look where Netflix is at. Okay. You see how far it is ripped up. right? From 12.11. And now where is that? Like if we're to look on here, where would that be on the Netflix chart? Well, if we zoom in here, you can see that shaded area right there on December 11th. Look at all that run on Netflix, okay? And now we're going to go back to Netflix here. And here we are. So over the long term, now I can only speak on me. This is problematic because it shows that we cannot catch even close to the share price appreciation that we're going to catch on the underlying. And Netflix isn't the most volatile thing out there. I mean, it's got some IV and some volatility to it. But it's not like Misty or even Nvidia maybe. I don't know what Nvidia's IV is, but it's not Misty, let's just say for an example. Okay? So what's going to happen here that we've already seen over time is that Netflix is going to continue over the long term. We're talking retirement. Long term here, years of living off this. This is going to go down in share price, which means the lower the share price, the less money that title, that J, whoever, YieldMax, has to work with in order to buy more options. And therefore, the distributions over time are going to be lower. To combat this, you have to put in so much of your distributions to keep the dividends at a somewhat decent level. Does that make sense? You have to put in like 80%, 90%, 100% just to keep the dividends from dropping drastically. So you have to continue to fund the account. And I cannot live off that. Right? I can't live the amount of money it would take to live off 5 or 10% of a YieldMax fund. I'm much better off for me going into something like SPY, where I don't have to put nearly that much into it. I could put the opposite, 10% into SPY, because it doesn't drop as much. And the dividends don't decay like this over time. So for me, in a real world situation, trying to actually live off a YieldMax fund, when they're all doing this, Netflix was just in the current, Netflix and Netflix was just my current example. But they're all doing this. So if you're trying to live off this or plan your retirement, I caution you to look at this and think about it. And how would you combat this? The only way to combat it, in my mind, is to, put 90% or 100% back into the fund to keep your distributions somewhat stable and somewhat keeping them at a level you can live off of. But for me, I would rather just put something like 10% back in SPY or JetQ or whatever and pull the rest. But that's just me and this is just what I'm seeing and my plan for retirement. I hope you enjoyed it. This is Mike, Tactical Stock Scalper, out.